You know, the English words you're hearing right now didn't just pop into existence. They're the end result of a pretty wild 6,000-year journey of invasions, migrations, and constant subtle changes. It's like a fossil record, but for language. And today, we're going to dig in and trace that story all the way back to its single ancient source.
All right, so let's just dive right in by looking at the puzzle itself. To really get where English came from, we first have to appreciate just how much it has changed over the centuries. So take a look at these three examples. Believe it or not, they are all English. The top one, from today, no problem. The middle one, from Chaucer, okay, it's tricky, but you can kind of see the English in there. But that bottom one, from the poem Beowulf, that looks like a completely different language, and yet it's not. It's Old English. So the big question is, how on earth do we get from that to the words I'm speaking right now? Well, that's the journey we're going on. To start solving this puzzle, we're actually going to work backwards. We're going to peel off the most recent major layer of influence on the language. And this part of the story kicks off with an invasion. The history of Britain is really a history of invasions, and every single one left its mark on the language. You had the Germanic tribes, the Vikings, but the one date that's absolutely crucial for us is 1066, the Norman Conquest. This single event completely changed the direction of English forever. So when the French-speaking Normans took over England, they didn't just take the crown, they basically took over the vocabulary of power. Suddenly, all the important words for things like government, law, art, and fine dining were French and Latin. This is exactly why so much of our fancy vocabulary today feels like it's based in Latin, even when the actual core of the language is something else entirely.
And this is the perfect illustration of the class divide from back then. You had the Anglo-Saxon farmers working in the fields, using the old Germanic words for the animals, cow, pig, sheep, but the Norman lords sitting around the fancy dinner table, they used the French words for the meat on their plates, beef, pork, mutton. It's like a linguistic ghost of that conquest, and that split is still right here in our language today. So, if we strip away that huge layer of French and Latin that got bolted on top, what do we find underneath? Let's dig down to the true foundation of English. This is Old English, the language of Beowulf. It sounds completely alien, right? But this is the language that was spoken all across England before the Normans ever showed up. This is the bedrock. This Old English was originally brought over to Britain by Germanic tribes, the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes. That's why it has a much more German-sounding feel to it. Then later on, Viking invaders came and threw a whole bunch of their Old Norse words into the mix. So the core grammar, the basic everyday words of our language, they are thoroughly Germanic. But this brings up a fascinating question. How can we possibly know about languages that were spoken thousands of years ago, especially if they were never even written down? Well, this is where linguists turn into detectives. Here's the key. Languages don't change randomly. They actually change in predictable, systematic ways. Linguists are able to spot these patterns, these consistent sound shifts across related languages, and then they can use them to work backwards. It's almost like reversing a math problem to find the original formula. This makes it a lot more concrete. For instance, take the English word pepper. In German, its linguistic cousin is Pfeffer. That P sound systematically shifted to a Pfeff sound. Or look at the English sh in shep. That corresponds to the harder sk sound in the Swedish word shep. These consistent shifts are like linguistic fingerprints that prove there's a family relationship. And because these sound changes are so consistent, linguists can do something amazing. They can reconstruct the parent language they all came from. We call it Proto-Germanic. Now, no one ever wrote it down, but by reversing all those sound shifts, we can be pretty confident that it existed around 500 BCE as the common ancestor of English, German, Swedish, and a whole bunch of others. But we can go back even further than that. Using the exact same detective work, linguists have taken an even bigger leap back in time. And they've found the ancestor of not just the Germanic languages, but of a vast, sprawling superfamily of languages. Just look at this timeline. We've traced our language all the way from today, back through the Norman Conquest, to Old English, and then back to Proto-Germanic. But the real starting point for this entire story is a language that was spoken 6,000 years ago. It's called Proto-Indo-European, or PIE for short.
And again, this is a reconstructed mother tongue, the great-great-great-grandmother of a massive family of languages. It was likely spoken about 6,000 years ago on the Pontic steppe, which is in modern-day Ukraine and southern Russia.
And the family that this one language produced is just staggering. It means that English is related not just to German and Swedish, but also to Spanish and Russian. And it doesn't stop in Europe. It's also a distant cousin to Persian, spoken in Iran, and Hindi, spoken all across India. All of them, every single one, are descendants of that one ancient language. Think about the sheer scale of that family for a second. All told, nearly 3 billion people on Earth today, that's almost half the world's population, speak a language that traces its roots all the way back to that single Proto-Indo-European source. It's just incredible. So, after this 6,000-year journey through invasions, sound shifts, and migrations, what does it all really mean? Well, it means that many of us share a deep and often completely invisible history with each other. The most amazing thing is that this means billions of people who can't understand a single word of each other's languages are, in a very real way, speaking the same ancient words. They've just been filtered and bent and reshaped by 6 millennia of human history, which created the beautiful diversity of languages we have all around us today. For now, this is as far back as the evidence can take us. But it leaves you with one last fascinating question to chew on. If we can scientifically prove this deep, hidden connection between so many different people, what other, even more ancient human stories are still out there, just waiting for us to decode them?